Welcome to another episode of Mostly Sci-Fi. My name is Mostly Sci-Fi, and I'm your host. Please like and subscribe. So I decided that I'm going to have a new series out, and it's basically has to do with aliens, bug hunt, um, ultimate prey. I think it's Predator, AVP, ultimate prey. If it bleeds, and we're gonna be listening to individual stories, and then I'm gonna be making comments on these stories while we listen to them. Okay, so I thought this was a kind of good idea. Hopefully, it drums up some support and some subscribers. So please don't forget to subscribe to my Patreon account. It's right here. Boom. All you have to do is do that. Okay, if you don't like Patreon, you can just get on something like this, right? One of my videos, and I don't know why they hide the thanks, but it's really bothersome. But the thanks is here, $1 or $2 is awesome. And yeah, so let's get to it. So what we're gonna be listening to is Deep Black, and this was in the anthology of Aliens Bug Hunt. All right, so Deep Black is a 2017 short story written by Jonathan Maberry, published by Titan Books as part of the anthology Aliens Bug Hunt, a sequel to Alien 3. It follows a trio of elite Colonial Marine operatives who are deployed to Fiorina. I keep on saying Fury 161 when suspicious activity is detected on the surface of the long abandoned world. So we're gonna check that. They got the plot. I guess they got some goofs. We'll see some goofs after, and then I would just kind of review it after we listen to it. So I already bought it on Audible here. So I have it on Audible, and I have the particular story already here. Okay, already drummed up. So let's sit back and let's enjoy this. I have me 2 brews of Stella Artois, and let's get to it. So let's see. Listen.
Deep Black by Jonathan Maberry. We came in low and fast, using the storm to hide us. Lightning crackled around us, and heavy winds tried to knock us down, but Lulu was on the stick, and she could pilot a falling star through hell itself. Was it a good landing? No, but we didn't die, so put it in the win category. I wanted to bring a full platoon with me, but during the mission briefing, it was determined that a 3-man team had a better chance than a platoon or even a squad. What they called a low-impact intrusion for surveillance and intelligence gathering with potential for targeted response. Typical military action report language that basically meant we had to go in, see what was what, and either come out with intel or pull some triggers. No possible estimates of the risk levels because we didn't know what we were dealing with. Fiorina Fury 161 wasn't our world. It didn't belong to the suits at Weyland-Yutani. Not anymore. Long time ago, it had been a mining facility run by a WT private prison firm, with the inmates doing hard labor mining raw minerals, mostly lead and iron, then smelting, forming, and shipping it off-world. When they found lead on 700 asteroids and dwarf planets, all of which had lower gravity and therefore less cost to put product into orbit, the big world-based mines got shut down. The Fury miners were mostly shipped out, but a group elected to stay. A bunch of religious assholes who'd found Jesus and wanted to wait for Jesus on a rock that was as close to salvation as a pimple on the devil's taint. For some reason, that made sense to them, but they were double X losers, so don't look too close at the logic or you'll hurt yourself. After WT dropped its claim, Fury fell even farther off the public radar. The lease expired. No one gave a boiled shit about it. Until an escape pod crashed there 10 years ago. That never made the news feeds. No, sir. That was need to know, and most people didn't need to know. The company did, of course, but only select groups within it. I never heard of it before last Tuesday. Not a word, not a peep, until I needed to know. I just brought my team in from a dirty little job in a dirty little floating lab, orbiting a planet where the Neo-Norse religious fruitcakes were building a new kind of hyperspeed torpedo for use against mercantile transports. Why they thought Odin would care about interstellar trade is beyond me. I was told to shut them down, and we shut them all the way down. Didn't lose a man, or woman for that matter, but we rained down hell on them. Good practice for some of my greener shooters, because the Neo-Norse were pretty tough. Not tough enough. We got to the way station expecting a 3-day pass and a serious assault on the alcohol stores, but they were waiting for us with orders. Go to Fury 161 and find out who had landed at the old mine and turned on the lights. No one knew who was there. All we knew is that it wasn't us. So fuck it. We shipped out on a Starslip F-430. Yeah, one of the new ones. Looks exactly like a bullet. Big, blunt, ugly, fast. They loaded us into a launch platform and pulled the trigger. When we woke up, we were in orbit over the target. 4 people on the ship. 3 of us and a pilot. Pilot was a synthetic named Sid, who looked like my mother in guy's clothing. Not intended, just happened that way. Sid wasn't one of the chatty kind. He drove the boat, handled the wake-up call from hypersleep, and handled the post-transit briefing. I was first on deck and had to answer the usual questions after waking up, just to make sure my brain hadn't turned to ice decaf. "Name?" asked Sid. "Ellen Harper." "Rank?" "Master Sergeant, United States Colonial Marine Corps Force Recon." Went through the rest. Serial numbers, mother's maiden name, first pet. Lulu Hoops and Bax Patel came out next. Both E5 sergeants, both old friends. We'd all walked through the Valley of the Shadow more times than I could count. Reliable, steady, lethal as fuck. Bax was the nice one, as far as that goes. Lulu was nasty as shit. They were our version of good cop, bad cop, but when it got real, they were both Marines, which meant they took zero shit from anyone on the wrong side of the line. I'd picked them because we'd worked 3-man gigs enough times to be halfway psychic with one another. Not really, the way soldiers are. There's a thing that happens when people with the right training and enough practical experience can read each other with perfect clarity. A glance is a whole conversation. You know them all the way down to the marrow, and you've been in so many dicey situations that you are 100% positive you can trust them. Gets to the point where even in a firefight, we're also aware of each other, that we're handing over a fresh magazine before the guy next to us fires his last round. Like that. Once we'd shaken off the effects of the 4-week in-flight sleep, we clustered around Sid and he briefed us on the latest intel. Our ship was in a wide and irregular orbit, making use of all the orbiting space junk left over from the mining days. The Starslip was the latest generation of stealth tactical craft, so unless someone knew how to look for us, all they'd see is more junk among the junk. Certain elements of the mission have been marked restricted until we established orbit, explained Sid. Here's what we know. And he told us the real backstory to the crashed escape pod. The story didn't start on Fury. It started long before I was born. It started with a mining ship called the Nostromo, and it involved a horror show alien species, a true Xenomorph. Sid told us about the only survivor of that ship, a flight officer named Lieutenant Ellen Ripley, a nobody who managed somehow to survive an encounter with a uniquely aggressive species. That was how Sid described it, uniquely aggressive. I saw Lulu and Bax swap looks. We hadn't heard any of this shit. Sid told us about Ripley destroying her ship after all the crew had been killed and escaping in a life pod. He told us about Ripley being in hypersleep for 57 years, about her getting found by a deep salvage team, about her being kicked to the curb by the company because no one believed her insane story, especially after she blew up her ship. And then how the colony on Acheron LV-426 went dark, which is the exomoon of Kalpamos, where Ripley's team had first encountered the Xenomorphs. Then Sid told us the part that made my balls want to climb up inside my chest cavity. A team of Colonial Marines had been sent by WT to Acheron to assess the situation. And let's face it, to obtain the Xenomorphs. The Bioweapons Division guys must have been creaming their jeans at the thought of what they could do with one of those. But everything went to shit. By the time the expeditionary force got there, the colonists were dead and the monsters were off the chain. Everyone died except one Marine, a corporal named Hicks, a little girl who was the last surviving colonist, and, no shit, Ellen Ripley. And she nuked the whole atmosphere processing plant and turned a good chunk of that planet into a glow-in-the-dark back porch of hell. "This Ripley bitch likes blowing shit up," observed Lulu.
Yeah.
"Kinda dig her." Bax shook his head. "Why do I have a feeling that from now on, every time you blow something up, you're going to be saying you're going full Ripley?" Lulu thought about it, shrugged, nodded. "Could happen." Sid ignored them and told us about how the Xenomorph had somehow infected Ripley during hypersleep, and because these fuckers had molecular acid for blood, the smoke from burning plastic triggered fire alarms in the life pods. The tubes containing the 3 survivors were transferred to a life pod and dropped into the atmosphere of the closest non-vital planet. Guess where? Fury. "Fuck me," said Lulu. "Is this a rescue mission for them?" "After all these years?" asked Bax. "We're coming pretty late to the prom." "No," said Sid. Hicks and the girl were reported KIA when the pod crashed. Ripley was rescued by the prisoner miners, but there was at least one Xenomorph on the pod. It escaped and killed most of the prisoners and all of the staff. "Fuck me," whispered Bax. "Just one?" "Just one," said Sid. "What about Ripley?" I asked. "Dead too. A Xenomorph impregnated her, and she committed suicide to prevent the birth of a queen of that species."
Right.
"Impregnated how, exactly?" asked Lulu. "She get tired of blowing them up and decide to do the nasty with one?" "I don't need that image in my head, thanks," said Bax. Sid explained about the life process of the Xenomorph. "Well, fuck me blind and move the furniture," Bax muttered, and he looked a little green. "Did Ripley blow up the mine, too?" asked Lulu. "Not this time," said Sid, and he explained how she organized the prisoners to try and destroy the alien by entombing it in molten lead. It hadn't worked, but she killed it anyway. To prevent anyone from harvesting the queen inside her, Ripley had thrown herself into the lead. There was nothing of her left to harvest. There was one survivor from the prison, but he was a nobody and he vanished off the official record. Weyland-Yutani sent 3 separate science teams to scour the area, but they came up dry each time. The file on Fiorina 161 was closed and filed away as an expensive waste of time and opportunities. "So who's down there?" asked Bax. "Unknown," said Sid. "The company left some satellites in orbit and they started ringing bells." "Squatters?" asked Lulu. "Unlikely." "Even so," she said, "how's this our gig? We roll out to protect civilians and protect WT assets, but nobody who signs our paychecks owns a stake in Fury anymore, so why are we all the way the fuck out here?" Sid said, "We're picking up heat signatures from the mine and from a large super light-speed craft. It has stealth sheathing that's almost good enough to hide it from our sweeps." I grinned. Almost is a fun word. Stealth tech is rampant, and some of it's good enough so some of the rival planets and rival corporations can't find each other. We can find nearly everyone, and no one, no fucking buddy, can find our birds. WT developed it for the military, but they've been using it for their own private ops too, like ours. The fact that someone is bankrolling an expensive operation means they found something important on Fury. If it's important, then it legally belongs to WT. "Legally?" echoed Bax, one eyebrow raised. "Ethically, then," conceded Sid. Then he seemed to consider the weight of that word, too. "The company never formally relinquished the planet, and have since paid retroactive taxes and fees to fully reinstate their claim." "They own it," I said. "Whose ship are we talking about?" "It's anyone's guess as to which corporation put a ship down there," said Sid. "Whoever it is has money, though. No group of squatters could buy a ship like that." "If they can afford that tech," said Bax glumly. "Then they can afford shooters to protect it." "Agreed," said Sid. Lulu gave him a killer smile, thin and hard and ice cold. "Fuck 'em." Lulu drove the dropship. She always drives like she's running from a bank heist. Bax kept praying to Ganesha, and I kept rechecking my safety harness. Stupid, I know, because if we crashed at the speed she used, all I'd be is a well-secured corpse. There was an ice storm turning the region around the mine into a winter wonderland, 22 below, with winds that turned snow into a fusillade of ice crystals. Lulu was singing some old-ass song about weed, whites, and wine. She steered with the shifts of the wind, so that if anyone was looking, we'd fade into the background motion dynamics like a piece of blown debris, if we showed up at all. With storm winds, there was always a chance of a shield panel flying off. "Hold on to your sacks, boys!" yelled Lulu, "'cause this is going to be a bumpy landing." She wasn't joking, or underestimating. We hit the ground hard enough to make the impact suppression system cry out in protest. Everything rattled, from the deck bolts to the fillings in my teeth. When we deployed onto the surface, I thought Bax was going to fall down and kiss the dirt. Lulu grinned as she strolled out after us. "Pussies," she said. "Kiss my brown ass," said Bax, but his voice trembled so bad there was no emphasis. "Okay," I snapped. "Cut the chatter." I pulled up an area map on the tactical computer strapped to my forearm. Lulu and Bax touched theirs to mine to establish a dedicated team Wi-Fi and sync up the telemetry. We couldn't risk using satellite uplinks because of the danger of detection. We had a good path to the mine, and by good, I mean it was a hard scrabble pain in the balls. The kind of path no one in their right mind would ever use, which made it a good choice for coming up on the blind side of whoever was here. It took us 5 hours to go 6 kilometers. Along the way, we encountered rocks, more rocks, ice, more rocks, snow, and more motherfucking rocks. Once Bax saw a creature darting through a drift, but when Lulu popped it with a single silenced round, it turned out to be some kind of long-haired, six-legged something that none of us had ever seen before. It wasn't a xenomorph, though, so we left it in a blood-stained patch of snow and moved on. The winds were at our backs, which was some mercy because they were so strong it would have doubled the march time to walk into them. As it was, they pushed us forward. When we were half a click out, we stopped for warm water from our flasks and a full protein and electrolyte bar. Lots of calories, all the right nutrients, but they tasted like ass. Greasy, gritty ass, too. Small wonder they never caught on in civilian markets. We could feel the recharge, though, and after a 15-minute rest, we were ready to rock and roll. We crept to the top of a ridge of stone that rose from the shoreline of a frigid ocean and studied the tableau below. "Yeah," said Bax. "Definitely not squatters." The mining building was vast, more like a medieval castle back on Earth. Huge towers of stone and iron that rose into the stormy sky. Ice seemed to reach up its sides like clutching fingers. There were snow-covered heaps of ancient trash and shapeless chunks of metal. Nearby, a ship squatted on 8 powerful legs. It was a design I'd read about but never encountered. A Bylong-class exploration cruiser. 900 feet, with a 200-foot forward beam that tapered back to a slender tail. It was painted to look like its name, a white dragon, teeth and all. Massive fusion engines, and an impressive and intimidating collection of gun ports and rocket pods pointing in every useful direction. I didn't like it, but now I understood it. Or some of it, anyway. Outside the reach of planetary government or star system alliances, there was no real law. Everything beyond the core systems was run by whoever could afford to provide infrastructure and protection. The Weyland-Yutani company owned big, gaudy chunks of that real estate, but space was, let's face it, really fucking big. There was plenty of room and plenty of resources out there to encourage competition and an entrepreneurial drive on an epic scale. After WT, there were some dozen next-tier corporations, and on the tier below that, maybe 300 smaller ones. The only company that offered any real competition to WT was the Jingti Long Corporation, based on New China. They had 12 star systems, and business interests in everything from novelty genetically engineered pets to heavy metals mining to pharmaceuticals. Total number of employees was 16 million, give or take. So yeah, big. They call their special operators Wugong, which means centipedes. Comes from the type of combat rig they wear that has a lot of extra extendable arms capable of using autonomous fire weapons. I've gone toe-to-toe with some of their teams on disputed asteroids and planets. They buried some of my boys, and I buried a bunch of theirs. We failed to bond. Fuck me, murmured Bax, because he lost 10 inches of intestine 3 years ago after a dust-up with a Wugong kill team. Sweet, said Lulu, because she didn't like anyone and was always turned on by the prospect of a fight with someone worth fighting. I said nothing. This was a day on the job. They don't pay me to have opinions. Beyond the ship was an area that had been cleared off by bulldozers, and in the center of it was the squat, ungainly, and clearly damaged hulk of a Type 337 EEV military lifeboat. It was one of those old-fashioned ones that didn't look like it was deigned to do anything but fall. Badly. Small portable field work shelters had been erected, and interior light made them glow. We saw no one moving. Maybe they're all inside to get out of the storm, suggested Bax. Lulu, I said, thermals. She flipped down her visor and tapped the temple controls to cycle from ordinary vision to thermal scan. Got 'em. How many and where? Nothing in the lifeboat, nothing in the work tents, but a shit ton in the ship. Give me a count. She chewed her lip. Can't lock down a hard number. Some in the forward part of the ship. Call it 18. But most of the signals are soft, like the cooling. Some trace signatures, too. Dozens of those, but I can't get an active read on them. Would be the shielding messing with the sensor.
Okay, so you heard that? You said there's a reading, there are dozens of trace readings that he can't read. And I think what that is that's probably the Xenomorph from that Ripley tried to kill. Well, there was the one, that she tried to kill, and it probably created an egg, or whatever. So it laid a queen. I think it laid a queen inside her, and it also laid, I guess, another egg, another queen. It could have laid 2 queens or something. So here we go.
Suggested Bax. Maybe, I said. What else? There's a cluster in the engine room, but that's even muddier. I think they're clustered around the reactor.
Okay, there you go. There you go. That solidifies it. Then the warm part of the place. So, it's Xenomorphs.
Clustered? Looks like it. Jammed in so tight I can't count individual signatures. Best guess is 10. I squinted at the ship. That's a 70-man boat. Big damn ship to land, said Lulu. I'd love to see what they have under the hood. Where's the crew? Asked Bax. In the mine? Ventured Lulu, and shook her head. No, even with interference from the structure I'd get something, and it's stone cold dead in there. It was a bad choice of words, and she realized it as soon as she said it.
Okay, so I just made a mistake. I thought that these things were in the Fury mine, but they're not. They're on the Chinese ship. Okay, sorry about that.
What's the play, boss? She asked to cover her words. We didn't come out here to be bystanders, I said. We go down, scout the ground, and then see about getting onto that ship. Rules of engagement? Asked Bax. I nodded to the lifeboat. That came off a Marine Corps ship, which means it's our property. The mine and everything else belongs to the people we work for, which makes everyone on that ship looters. Personally, I do not play well with kids who try to steal my toys. Lulu and Bax smiled. They weren't nice smiles. I doubt mine was either. We came down quietly, making maximum use of cover, guns up and out, taking turn running point whenever we changed direction. We went to the Sulaco lifeboat first and peered inside. I expected it to be a charred mess, but I was wrong. We paused to stare at what had been done to it. It was a shell. Every piece of equipment, every control panel, every inch of wiring was gone. The Jingti Long science geeks had done the most thorough job of stripping a ship that I've ever seen. "I don't get this, boss," said Bax very quietly. "Why strip it out? The boat crashed, some of it burned. Nothing left inside was of any use even in a fire sale." "Yeah," agreed Lulu. "Long damn way to come to get used parts." "Which means it's not why they came," I said. "Ripley got implanted with the alien embryo aboard that boat. There had to be at least one of those facehugger sons of bitches on board." "Sure," said Bax. "But I thought WT science teams have been all over this stuff." "Maybe they missed something," said Lulu with a shrug. "Or maybe they have better ways of looking," I said. "You know how Jingti Long operates. They always take a weird left-field approach to everything. They've jumped the line in tech development a lot of times, so maybe they figured out how to do what the WT Nerd Squad failed to do." It was true enough. Even though Weyland-Yutani was the big dog in the technologies market, there was a good reason why Jingti Long was constantly nipping at their heels. From what I'd read, I figured it was an even split between really good R&D and really good corporate espionage. Bax and Lulu looked at the boat, then at the mine, and then at me. "So what you're saying," Lulu began, "is that this whole thing is about these assholes trying to harvest aliens?" "Xenomorphs," corrected Bax, but Lulu ignored him. "Maybe," I said. "We don't know, but I think we better find out before they go and do something stupid." As we moved off, I could feel ice form in the pit of my stomach. Sid had told us a lot about the Xenomorphs, and they were some nasty-ass critters, hard as hell to kill, with that acid blood, some weird extendable mouth, strong and apparently vicious in the extreme. If all they'd ever done was kill a flight crew on a cargo ship or the unarmed prisoners in a mine, I wouldn't be too worried. But they'd slaughtered an entire platoon of Marines on Acheron. Our mission parameters included securing any specimens, in whole or part, for return to the WT labs.
Good luck with that.
But what trumped that was to make sure no one else walked off with so much as a fingernail from the creatures. That would give the competition something our team hadn't yet managed to acquire, which would result in something a lot worse than stock drops when Jingti Long developed it into a bioweapon. That could shift more than the economic balance of power. With xenomorphs on the leash, Jingti Long could start, and likely win, a war. We used the heaps of debris to hide our approach, but then Bax tapped my arm and nodded to the security cameras mounted along the sides of the Jingti Long ship. The small sensor lights were all dark. I looked around. All of the work lights in the camp were still on, but there wasn't anything showing in the ship's few portholes. "Is that good or bad?" asked Bax. "Nothing's good on this rock," I said. We did a complete circuit of the ship and found no trace of activity. The engine housing was still warm, but that would be on its own system because it takes too long to restart those babies and is easier and cheaper to leave them in idle. We ended our recon at the rear hatch, and that's where we found the blood. There was a lot of it. Too much of it. We stopped and stood at the edge of a wide puddle that could not have been made from what was in the veins of a single man. 6'7", maybe. Lulu knelt and waved her hand to indicate hundreds of tiny islands in that lake of red. Shell casings. There are lumps of meat, too. I heard Bax mumbling a prayer. Om Gum Ganapati Nama. It was a prayer of protection to Ganesh, the Hindu god who removes obstacles and offers protection. Lulu said nothing. She generally didn't believe in anything, but she knew this wasn't the moment to mock someone who was calling for support. No atheists in foxholes, especially on planets this far from home. We looked at the rear hatch. It stood ajar, and through the 5-inch gap, all we could see was a black nothing, except on the doorframe, on which was a bloody handprint. It was not made by a human hand. We stood there, barrels pointed at the door, none of us speaking. I was scared, I admit it. We all were. The Chinese team had come here to find what the Weyland-Yutani guys had missed. An egg, maybe? A facehugger? Some DNA? Something. And they'd found it. Or it had found them. I tried to do the math in my head based on the mission intel. From the sketchy data collected so far, we knew the xenomorphs grew fast. Real fast. The one on the Nostromo went from egg to infant to full-sized killer in under a day.
Jesus.
Scary thought. Very scary thought, considering that there were 70 or more people on the Xingti Long ship. How'd they grow one, though? Did they find an egg hidden on the lifeboat? Unlikely. Our boys would have found something like that. Unless... When Ripley was rescued from the crashed boat, it was days before the killings in the mine began, and even longer before the first WT team arrived. We knew that one of the facehuggers must have gotten to Ripley because she was impregnated, or whatever we should call what happened to her. There had to be a second facehugger, because a xenomorph began killing everyone in the mining facility. Had there been a third? Or fourth? How many had come down to Fury with Ripley, Hicks, and the girl? How many had survived the crash? How many had escaped into the frozen wasteland of this world? Was that what the Chinese worked out? Had they come here in the hopes of finding something that wasn't on board the lifeboat, but which had escaped from it? That handprint seemed to be a mocking, ironic statement. It told us that everyone involved in this op was stupid, suicidally stupid. Even knowing what we knew about these creatures, we had underestimated them, time and time again. On the Nostromo, on Acheron, on the Sulaco, on Fury 161. Mistakes every step of the way, because civilizations as technologically advanced as ours make those kinds of mistakes. What do they call it? Hubris? Something like that. Us thinking we're smarter than nature, and when has that ever been the case? We should have learned that lesson in the 21st century, when all those diseases they thought they'd beaten came back because people used antibiotics the wrong way. What was the death toll in the 2020s and 2030s? 65 million? Something like that. The same for the first Mars colonies, when they thought they'd be able to do workarounds to the problems of radiation and bacteria in the ice there. I visited the graveyard once. Out of the first 50 colonists they sent, 48 of them died of cancer or infections from unknown bacteria. We're fucking idiots. A lot of the time. "What's the call, boss?" asked Bax, but I didn't answer right away. Instead, I looked from that open door up to the clouds. Our mission was to secure the location, but to also secure any and all biological samples. Of this? Jesus Christ, I said. The others cut me sharp looks. I kept my gun pointing at the line of darkness between door and hatch. "I want you to listen to me," I said very softly. And I told them exactly what I'd been thinking. All of it. They stood their ground and listened. "We're not on the policy level, boss," said Bax. "I know. We're here to do a job," said Lulu. "I know." Deep inside the ship, we heard a sound. A single human scream, of pain, of use and a terrible resignation, as if something was being done to body and soul that the mind could not escape but could not bear. Then the voice cried out something in Chinese that none of us could understand, except that we did. Not the words, but the meaning, the intent. It was a prayer, screamed out so loud it was hard to tell if the voice belonged to a man or a woman. A piercing shriek that was way past the point where it was begging for mercy. It was begging for release. The scream rose and rose, and then it disintegrated into wetness. And then silence. Absolute and awful. Bax licked his lips. "And that's what they want us to take back to Earth?" "Yeah," I said. "Good," he said. "Yeah." Bax held his gun firm, but he took a single step backward. Not a retreat exactly, more like a statement. Lulu turned sharply toward him. "What are you doing?" she demanded. Bax didn't answer, but he took another step backward. "We have a job to do." "Yes, we do," I said. Now she turned to me, frowning because of something she heard in my voice. She started to say something, but there was a new sound from inside. A different kind of shriek. High, but not human. No, not human at all. We listened. It came again, and it was closer this time. "Boss?" asked Lulu, and now there was doubt in her voice. Another scream, and another. No, two of them overlapping, not one creature. We listened. We heard them. Them. The screams. And beneath that sound was a scraping, slithering, clicking jumble of noises, coming toward us from the deep black beyond that narrow opening. They want us to bring this back to Earth. This time it was Lulu who spoke. Her voice was hushed. All of the bravado was gone. When I turned to look at her, I saw that she had backed up and stood beside Bax. Yeah, I said. No, she said. No, said Bax. I put the stock of my rifle against my shoulder. No, I said.
Okay, so wow. All right, so that was the end of Deep Black by Jonathan Maberry. Now I listened to all, I think 18 stories they have in here. We're gonna go through some of them, not all of them, because some of them are just kind of not worth it. Not today, of course. We're not gonna go, but we're gonna have another time period to go through others, and also if it bleeds. But the reason why I started out with this one first is because I believe this story is the best one out of all the stories. A lot of the stories are kind of like, with Bug Hunt. I probably got to go back and listen to them again. But a lot of stories weren't so impressive. They had one story about Bishop and what happened with him. I think it was Bishop. It was before, I think, before Fiore, or it could have been another Bishop or another Hendrix. I don't know. I forgot. But this story was memorable to me. And that's why I out of the 18 stories, I went directly to this one. They got one by Scott Stigler. He did Alien Phalanx. The Alien Phalanx is probably arguably the best alien novel there is, other than, in my opinion, of Charybdis. I put, sorry, not Charybdis. Oh my gosh. There's one that I love. I was talking about the Cold Forge. So, other than the Cold Forge, right? I think Alien Phalanx is the best, right? But anyway, I give Deep Black, I would say 9 out of 10. And that's because it left me questioning a lot at the end. I had to listen to it again because I'm like, did you go in there? Of course, they're saying, nah, we're not, we're not gonna mess with this. We can't mess with this, right? We can't mess with this. But again, those things were coming at them. They were at the hatch, I guess at the doorway to it, right? To these creatures. So they're saying they're at the hatch. And I know a hatch means an opening. So can they close it back? Are they able to close it in time to get out and close it in time and then escape to their ship? I think I wanted to know more about what's going to happen. That's a question I asked. They're stepping back. They're like, nah, we ain't stupid. We're going back. Or is it that they're going to plant charges around this whole area and just destroy the whole area? But I don't think so. I guess not, because they never spoke anything about having explosives. They only spoke about having guns, right? Another question is the company that sent them, knowing the lethal nature of these creatures, why would you only send 3 people there? I mean, you're basically sending them to their deaths. You know how lethal these creatures are. Did they know that the Chinese company was there already? And if they did know that the Chinese company was there already, why would they only send 3? Because the Chinese company, they're going to have a whole bunch of people there, right? Either they're going to get assimilated or you're just gonna have to deal with a lot of firepower. And then what I recognize is that both the other soldiers were E5, which, in army, that's like kind of like a low rank, like a grunt rank, right? A rank that maybe doesn't have that much experience with, I would say fighting for very long periods of time, or E5 is just a very low rank, okay, in the army, right? Yeah, so the thing that I liked about this is that it had me on. I was very, very interested in it. The narrator was good. I think Jonathan Maberry, he should do more of these stories. Maybe even do a novel with these specialized 3 people, because I want to know if they survived. Maybe make a longer book out of this. Maybe it was longer than what it was, but it ended very perfectly. I wanted more. And so that's why I would give this like a 9 out of 10. It's a perfect story. So the next story we're probably going to do is, because they got a whole bunch of them here, I don't know, Dangerous Play, maybe, by Scott Sigler, or Spite by Tim Levin. Okay, one of those two. They are veterans in the game. Tim Levin is a veteran in the game. Scott Sigler is a veteran in the game. But I got to pay my respects to Jonathan Maberry, because he did an excellent job with this story. So most of these stories are like 30 minutes or something like that. And so that's what we're going to do. We're going to be looking at these stories and analyzing these stories. And hopefully what I want to do is I want to bring a dead guy, because I told you about this guy, a Dead Guys Productions, and maybe we could both do listening, and then we can both have some opinion or a review of the stories, right? So we could tell you what best to buy, what best not to buy, what stories you could buy. I think between the both of us, we've probably listened to all of the Alien franchise and watched all of the Alien movies and stuff. And so it's good that we can inform you on stuff, and also sci-fi stuff. So I'm going to suppose that to him, and we're going to talk about it. But what do you think about this story? Do you think it was a good story? Or do you think it's just a run-off-the-mill story that, didn't really tickle your fancy or whatever? Let me know in the comment section. And this is mostly sci-fi. Well, mostly.